Well, I mean,
The other thing
you talk about whether this is democracy or not, or whether it's going to be representational of a voice. Well, we do have elected Indigenous voices in Parliament, and we can see exactly how the voice to Parliament is already treating people like Jacinta Price and Warren Mundine, where they're not only being ridiculed, but they're being racially abused by the very people who are meant to support the voice to Parliament. Now, this indicates that it may not be about the voice, but about having the right voice that is politically helpful to the larger political narrative. Now, Ken, you also noted in your piece that part of these divisions that you talked about are going to try to reflect the varying practices of different Indigenous communities. Now, I mean, good luck with that, considering there's no consistency with this sort of stuff. How complicated is just the division part of this voice going to be? Because it doesn't sound like even that basic entry level is workable.
Well, the answer to the question is that we don't know. And you're left with a situation of having, I've been trying to draw a parallel to this. It's like, to me, if you go out to a builder to say, look, I want you to build a house. And the builder says, right, well, here's the contract. So you say, well, what are you building? Well, look, it's going to be a house with 35 rooms, and it's going to have a male and female toilet. And so, well, good. So what's each room going to look like? Well, we don't know. So they'll all be different. And one might look like a tent. Another might be made of bricks. Another might be made of asbestos. You go, well, can you tell me what it's going to be? And they go, well, look, no, we're not going to tell you what it's going to be. That'll happen. So how much is it going to cost? Oh, well, we don't know, but you'll be paying. And that's the sort of closest parallel I can get to a practical situation or explanation. The other thing that I find concerning is governance issues, because once the voice is established, the voice will then select an external ethics process, and that external ethics process will determine how the voice members are to behave or not to behave in a governance process. So this is not being established before those people are selected. The people who wind up on the voice will be selecting who's going to tell them what their ethics are. Now, is that going to be above board or not? It just reeks of a governance disaster zone built into the proposal. I find that quite extraordinary.
Well, it's not as if we've had issues with Indigenous bodies in the past ending up in corruption or anything like that. But having waded through this report, Ken, and just finally here today, are you feeling more or less confident about the quality of Albanese's voice proposal?
Well, I think we have to say that Australians are quite clearly saying that they want Indigenous population to have a clear voice and be able to be represented. But what we've got here is something is that we don't know what that voice is from the perspective of the Indigenous people themselves. I think that is an issue that hasn't been covered. I think it's a very important issue, because if we are going to have a proper democracy and a proper functioning democracy, and we're going to have this organised representation from the Indigenous community, I think we owe it to the Indigenous community themselves to be sure that their voice is a truly democratic voice and they are genuinely represented, and that it's not a scam and that it's not a con. This is currently heading in a very concerning direction, I would have to say.